Hello everyone, welcome to the Keep Indianapolis Beautiful Adopt a Block webinar. My name is Heather Maurer. I'm the Director of Education for Keep Indianapolis Beautiful. And this webinar is for anyone who was not able to attend our Adopt a Block presentation in person, or even if you did, perhaps you would just like a refresher on some of this information. Before we get started, I would like to thank all of you for being such dedicated stewards of your environment and leaders in your community as Adopt a Block captains. We are always open to your feedback about the program, so if you have suggestions or questions, we ask that you please be sure to reach out to us. So either by phone or by email. You can see our contact information is up here in this right-hand corner, and we encourage you to reach out to us, again, with any questions or suggestions that you might have. The topic of this webinar today is the importance of native plants. There is a longer, more detailed recording of a presentation that can be found on the Keep Indianapolis Beautiful website, specifically on the Adopt a Block page. So if you're looking for a little more in-depth information than what you're going to be receiving today, please feel free to check that out on our website. So as many of you are already aware, Keep Indianapolis Beautiful is an environmental and community nonprofit, and our mission is to engage diverse communities, creating vibrant public places, helping people and nature thrive. Our vision is a beautiful Indianapolis that is loved, cared for, and ecologically rich. So we have many programs here at KIB, and through almost every program we try to incorporate some kind of planting component. And as I stated in the slide before, our mission is to help people and nature thrive, and we believe that those two pieces are very closely aligned. The health of our natural environment is directly related to the health of our Indianapolis residents. So we feel that we have a responsibility to do our best to restore our natural environment and to strengthen our urban ecosystem. So first of all, very briefly, what is an ecosystem? An ecosystem is a biological community of interacting organisms, both living and non-living, in their physical environment. It's a very complex system. It can be any size, from very small, like a pond that maybe is in your backyard and all the living and non-living things that interact in the pond. Or it could be the entire state of Indiana can be looked at as one ecosystem. So ecosystems are very dynamic, and they have a lot of intricate parts and intricate relationships happening within them that, if altered, can influence how that ecosystem functions. And at the very foundation of the ecosystem are plants. So this slide, you can see, is very fitting. All of the plants in this slide, in this green space, really represent the base of our ecosystem. They feed all of the other organisms. And one way that ecosystems can be drastically altered is if those plants are lost. And of course, we see that happening a lot as our city tends to grow more and more and become more urbanized. So again, we do a lot of planting all over the city, and we encourage our partners and our volunteers and our Adopt a Block captains to plant as well alongside us. And specifically, we really like to focus on planting Indiana native plants to help support those ecosystems. So what is a native plant? A native plant is any plant that was naturally occurring in a geographic area before human intervention. So a plant that's native to Indiana is one that was growing here before Europeans colonized the United States. Why do they matter? Well, native plants are important for a number of reasons, and the first one being all the ecosystem services that they provide. So ecosystem services are benefits that we as humans gain from a properly functioning ecosystem. So these are things like clean air and food for us to eat, and nutrient cycles, raw materials like wood, or ornamental services like clothing. So basically everything that nature gives us when nature is healthy is an ecosystem service. And then obviously other wildlife besides humans benefit from these services as well, but we'll just sort of focus on the human aspect here. Secondly, these plants are really important because our insects have co-evolved with these native plants. So they both developed together for thousands of years. They've co-evolved together, and they hold these very deep chemical relationships with one another, to the point where 90% of our insects that feed on plants are specialists, and that means that they can only feed from a very narrow set of food sources. So again, if we look at it in terms of humans and we try to equate it to our experience in the world, we can eat a lot of things as humans. We might be considered more generalists. There are 200,000 species of plants in the world, and humans can eat most of them or a lot of them, but we can't eat all of them. So you can see here on the left kind of a set of examples of plants that we really like to eat, that we get nutrition from. You got your kale, you got your spinach. But if you look here on the right, these are also plants, but we are not chemically adapted to eat them. Poison ivy is not going to agree with us so well. So we can sort of think of insects in the same way. Just because we put a plant in our yard doesn't mean that it's going to be a reliable food source for an insect. They may not be able to eat it. They may not be chemically adapted to eat it. They may be able to eat it, but it might not provide them very much nutrition. So again, these insects have co-evolved with native plants and have formed these chemical relationships and are only chemically adapted to eat from a very narrow set of those plants. Well, why do insects need reliable food sources in the first place? So let's look at this in the context of the food web. So this is our food web, and we can see the many different paths and relationships that connect our plants and our animals and our insects. And we're actually just going to focus on one sort of food chain within that larger food web for the purposes of our talk today. So we're going to focus specifically on the relationship between our producer and our primary consumer. Okay? So this is our plant and our insect, right? If we take away those reliable food sources and we don't have those native plants that our insects are chemically adapted to eat, then we cannot feed our primary consumers, which means we cannot feed our secondary consumers, and on and on and on and on. And all of a sudden, our ecosystem, our food web, begins to fall apart. A really nice example of a specialist is the monarch butterfly. So the monarch butterfly is one of the most widely recognized North American butterfly species. They have a very widespread range. There's a lot of public awareness, and that really helps them serve as a rallying point for pollinator conservation efforts. The monarch caterpillar is an insect specialist. So in its caterpillar stage, we can see it here, and it's a specialist. It's only chemically adapted to eat one genus of plant, just one. And it's called milkweed. And actually, since the monarch can complete its entire life cycle on this plant, we call that plant its host plant. But if we're going to put it in very, very simple terms, no milkweed, no monarchs. And we are actually seeing this come to light. Due to loss of habitat and other factors, monarch populations have declined 80% in the last 20 years. So again, it's important that when we add to our landscapes and we think about adding trees and plants that are going to not just be beautiful, but that are also going to support our insect species. Here on this slide, we can see some examples of the trees that KIB likes to plant because they can support 200 or more species of moths and butterflies. And we've affectionately named these our giving trees. So you can see the list of the ones that we really like to plant. The oak is at the top of the list because an oak tree can support about 500 different moth and butterfly species. So when we think about our adopt-a-block tree distribution, or any time that we want to plant trees in our yard, again, we want to think of those that are going to be supporting our native insects. So at this point, I hope everyone is starting to understand that we really do need the right plants to feed our insects and to make everything else in the ecosystem work. Native plants support the insects that support our wildlife. And another important bit of information is that it's not just the insects that need the plants. The plants also need insects. Plants use animals to reproduce through pollination. They rely on these insects and these animals to carry their seeds elsewhere. And pollination, of course, is extremely important to us humans as well. It's one of those ecosystem services that we talked about. From an agricultural perspective, 1 in every 3 bites of food we take is thanks to a pollinator. And a major portion of the crops we grow need to be pollinated in order to produce fruit. So to kind of tie it all together, native plants improve the population of pollinators, and therefore they improve the crop yield and improve the availability of food for us humans. So what can you do to help our environment and to make your community better? Well, all of you are already doing it by adopting your block and keeping it clean and putting your native plants in the ground. So if you want to get some more hands-on practice, if you're not totally sure how to properly plant a tree or how to properly put your plants in the ground, we invite you to come volunteer with us, and we will teach you, and you'll be able to contribute to restoring habitat all throughout the city. And it's very family friendly, and it's a very, very rewarding experience. So please come volunteer with us. You can also get more of your neighbors involved and share what you learned today. If more of your neighbors adopt their blocks, then you can fill your neighborhood with more beautiful native plants. All of you can put the native plants in your neighborhood. And you can also apply together for our Little Big grant. This is a block improvement grant. So the grant can be for anything that you and 2 other Adopt a Block captains in your neighborhood believe will make your community better. So it could be more plants, it could be signage, it could be fixing up a community space, it could be throwing a neighborhood party. These are just examples. We really want to hear from you about what's important to you and your neighbors, and we will help you make that happen through our Little Big grant. This concludes our webinar, and I want to thank you very much for tuning in, and I encourage you again to reach out to us with any questions or ideas that you might have, and we look forward to continuing to partner with all of you. So thank you very much.